Hey, it's Lou, and here's the thing. According to public polling, most people will tell you they care about their online privacy. But we sure don't act like it, because we have allowed the Googles and Facebooks of the world to collect and monetize a ton of personal information about us. This divide between what we say and what we do is called the privacy paradox. And I wonder, why does it exist? Because we're dumb? Because we're easy to exploit? Or maybe because we're lying to ourselves and we don't care about privacy at all. Let's start off with an example of the privacy paradox. Me. I'll tell you I care about my privacy, but somehow I've allowed Google and Facebook to collect a terrifying amount of personal information about me. I requested the Lou files from both tech behemoths, and it was disturbing to learn they have my Gchats, my Facebook messages, my search history, my contacts, my photos, even a record of where I was every time I accessed either site. I guess on some level I knew, or should have known, that all this was being recorded. But why didn't I do anything to protect my privacy? Well, let's consider how internet companies tell us about their privacy policies. Things like terms of service agreements. One privacy expert told me they are a joke, completely useless for the consumer. They're designed, written, and presented in a way that makes reading them impractical at best and extremely unlikely in practice. One study estimated, conservatively, that it would take the average person 201 hours a year to read all the terms of service of the websites they visit. That's more than 25 workdays, which would cost the economy here in the US $781 billion in lost productivity. That's ridiculous. So we don't read them. Instead, we choose to blindly trust these sites, thinking so many people use Google, we can't all be wrong, or if their privacy policies are that bad, wouldn't the government step in? The other thing to consider, most websites are aware of the psychological dynamics that prevent us from safeguarding our privacy effectively. According to a study by two privacy paradox experts I spoke to, I quote, "Various, sometimes subtle factors can be used to activate or suppress privacy concerns, which in turn affect behavior. The most obvious example of this is defaults. Websites know that people are often too lazy, too indifferent, or simply don't know how to change the default. So the default setting often is the least privacy protective. Perhaps more egregiously, there are design features that are clearly crafted to exploit us, something referred to as malicious interface design. When you try to unsubscribe from something, for instance, the font is really tiny, or the language during an opt-out is intentionally confusing. Another little psychological trick that websites play on us, false comfort. George Lowenstein, a renowned professor of psychology and economics, told me that websites like Facebook will offer users a number of different options for protecting their privacy. This makes users feel safe. Oh, look, Facebook has my back. But ironically, when users feel safe, they are more likely to give away information about themselves. And here's the thing. We give up our privacy so easily, in part because the loss of it is often invisible, and what we lose is intangible. So sometimes we don't even understand what we're giving up. For instance, if a bouncer outside of a club said you could enter only after handing over your address book, your photo, a transcription of your online conversations, you'll likely say no, or something stronger than no. But when Facebook requires it, the request doesn't seem as palpable. You're disconnected physically from the disclosure and its consequences. But even if you do fully understand what the trade-off is, this specific personal information for access to the site, the risk-reward analysis your brain runs is a bit out of whack. Humans tend to overestimate the benefit they're getting in the short term and underestimate the long-term consequences. This is something called the present bias. It essentially means that people crave immediate gratification, and that clouds our ability to understand what will happen in the future. This is something I experience every time I eat a donut, or more relevantly, Professor Alessandro Acquisti, who's probably the world's leading expert on the privacy paradox, told me this is the reason why we might post an offensive status or a photo that gets us a like, but we don't consider if that's going to cost us a job opportunity down the line.
Any personal information can become sensitive information.
Now, allow me to introduce another reason why the privacy paradox exists. we don't really care about our privacy. We just tell people we do. The gap isn't between what we say and what we do, but what we say and what we truly believe. I think this is a lesson that Microsoft learned through an unsuccessful advertising campaign called Scroogled, which highlighted many of Google's misdeeds and privacy shortcomings.
Google crosses the line and goes through every single Gmail, every word in every email.
The whole Scroogled thing never caught on. Google still has the most popular search engine and email service, despite near constant criticism about how it tracks users' behavior and sells it to advertisers. And another reason I'm suspicious about the idea we truly care about privacy, a 2014 experiment at MIT. Researchers broke students up into groups and asked them for their friends' email addresses. One of the groups was offered free pizza in exchange for the email addresses. That group was more likely to hand over their friends' info for something as small as pizza. The study also points out that when students had to endure even small frictions like sorting through multiple privacy options, they tended to put in little effort and just chose whatever was listed first, even if it wasn't the safest. Why? Why do we give up so easily? After all, privacy, according to a number of experts I spoke to, is an innate instinct. That's why we unconsciously lower our voice when we talk about something sensitive. Well, Lowenstein, that economist and psychologist I mentioned before, told me that privacy is being overpowered by an even more deeply seated instinct, the need to share, to be social, the instinct that things like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram exploit. Of course, this goes well beyond social media sites. Our finances, the places we get our news, where we apply for jobs, book our travel, go shopping, all of these places require us to hand over a bit of our privacy. And it's not clear, to me at least, what we're supposed to do if we want to maintain our privacy, but also benefit from the tech advantages of the 21st century. And that tension between privacy and progress makes many of us feel helpless. So I think we've subconsciously come to accept that giving up our privacy is simply the price we pay for being alive in the 21st century. And we hope that tech companies don't mishandle our info. That's why the industry has been allowed to mostly self-regulate without government interference. But more and more, we're learning that self-regulation hasn't worked. Cambridge Analytica improperly used data from tens of millions of Facebook users in an effort to disperse propaganda, to undermine democracy. And the other troubling thing that's coming into focus, our governments aren't capable. They literally lack the vocabulary to hold tech executives and internet architects accountable. The questioning of Mark Zuckerberg by the US Congress in the wake of the Cambridge Analytica scandal was an embarrassment. They didn't know the questions to ask, let alone what the answers should be.
How do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
Senator, we run ads.
Zuckerberg outwitted them because it was easy to do so. It's like manipulating grandma when she's left in charge of watching you. What's that smell? Oh, must be a skunk. Why are my eyes red? Must be the pollen. To be fair, European governments, unlike America, are rolling out some promising reforms. Europe's General Data Protection Regulation, which is supposed to take effect in May 2018, puts strict requirements on privacy notices, insisting that they be in concise, transparent, intelligible, and easily accessible form using clear and plain language. That's a good start, but certainly not enough. So here's an idea. If you really care about your privacy, A, take responsibility for it, do the reading, do the opting out, etc. And B, consider running for office. Politicians have been exposed as tech illiterate. A new generation ought to come in and hold the Googles and Facebooks of the world accountable. Okay, I'm gonna go live my life.
Somebody call you up and say, I want to see John Kennedy's file.
Absolutely not.
Could you, if it, could you, not would you do it, could you do it?
In theory.
Do you have the right to put my data, a name on my data, and share it with somebody?
I do not believe we have the right to do that.
How many data categories do you store, does Facebook store, on the categories that you collect?
Senator, can you clarify what you mean by...
You couldn't do this in China, right? Or what you did
Well,
in 10 years.
Well, Senator, there are some very strong Chinese internet companies.
Right, but you're supposed to answer yes to this question.